Federal Parliament resumes on Monday, and the member for Grey, Rowan Ramsey, he'll be heading over for that, Rowan. And what are some of the main messages you'll be taking back in this new year?
Oh, well, obviously we're still incredibly short of doctors on the ground, and government's made noises about it, but their first moves in government was to actually make it hard to get doctors into rural areas through the shifting the workforce shortage criteria. We are dealing with the same kind of issues as in Alice Springs, but not as bad, I must say, but out at Ceduna and Port Augusta and other places at the moment, which are certainly causing friction and concern on the ground. I think we're all concerned about where the economy is going, at the Reserve Bank, where they can do another round of interest rates on Tuesday. I mean, there'll be plenty of subjects for us to engage in when we get back there, Ricky. And I want to start trying to build some pressure up to keep the government moving on the road construction program that we've had in place, as you see, to drive Adelaide. The work that continues now on the Augusta Highway, well, we need a commitment from the government in their new budget to keep that job going. So we'll have to wait and see what happens.
Now, just on that health topic you mentioned, getting access to doctors, the federal government did announce on a somewhat related topic that they're going to create a new purpose-built remote health clinic at William Creek, investing $1 million there. Had you been involved in the background of this one? Was it news to you?
It was news to me, and so I don't know the detail. I imagine it's a facility where the flying doctor will drop in and run a clinic for the day type thing as they do in other places. I couldn't imagine it's going to be a manned clinic or anything like that. So, but I don't know the detail of it, but just given its remoteness, that's likely the way it will operate. So people that need regular appointments with doctors coming on that day, and then any emergency would be treated in the same way that they're always treated. They'll be triaged on the ground by whoever can do whatever they can.
Yes.
And then the doctor comes in and lifts them out. So, but I'm only guessing at that, reading between the detail. I did get a call from the Minister, Christy McBain, and she just told me she was up there making some announcements, and that's one of the ones that's come out.
Oh, it's good. You got a courtesy call at least. Something that you did flag there about, I guess, social disorder in somewhere like Ceduna. We also picked up from the administrator, put a press release out from Coober Pedy saying that there's some serious issues with alcohol abuse and related social discord in that area. What are you picking up on the ground from locals in places like Coober Pedy?
Well, Coober Pedy, this is an annual event, and there's some pretty serious liquor restrictions up there, but the issue is that people that come out of the lands still theoretically can't buy alcohol in Coober Pedy. They're banned, but they find ways. and of course the problem always is that people come to town is actually getting them home again because they can be broke and not have the ability to access transport, and there's a whole layer of different issues that come into it. They're very tolerant, the people of Coober Pedy, but you can't have towns where it feels unsafe on the street, particularly towns like Coober Pedy, like Ceduna, that rely largely or to a certain extent on tourism. And the last thing you want in your town is the message to go out to the grey nomads is don't stop there. And unfortunately, that's what happens when things get a bit torrid. So we need, like if people are doing illegal acts, we need more resource to make sure it is patrolled and policed. And that comes fairly back to the South Australian government, and they need to put more resources there to counteract that if that is what is needed.
Yeah, exactly the point the Coober Pedy administrator made to the Premier in a letter that he's released publicly. So obviously continuing frustration there. But you did flag during the debate on the cashless debit card the potential we could see problems in a place like Ceduna you've just mentioned. What are locals telling you is happening now since the cashless debit card was abolished in October?
Well, they're certainly telling me that things are not as good as they used to be. It's as one Indigenous bloke was telling me only on the phone a couple of days ago. He said it's pretty clear now that the card was doing a good job, and while once again it depends around when the money comes in and just what's happening on the ground. There's been men's gatherings and stuff in and around Ceduna, men's business. And it's sometimes, people go back to where they come from and things settle down. And I understand they've put some buses in place to try and get people to go home, back to Yalletha and Oak Valley. And that has relieved the situation a bit at the moment. But the underlying fundamentals are still there. There's a lot more money available for alcohol, drugs and gambling. And all of those are destructive behaviours if they're carried on in excess. And they have an impact on the individual, health impact. They have a terrible impact in many cases on families, and that includes, my understanding is quite an upswing in domestic violence and related matters. They have a kick on, particularly with children, and how they feel safe in their homes and where they attend school and all those kinds of things. And then it has an effect on the wider community, which once you get that situation where people don't feel safe in the street, and there's a Facebook page operating up there that I'm keeping a bit of an eye on. I just saw a post from a tourist saying, well, recording 12 months ago was wonderful, and this time we won't be staying. And of course, that's the last kind of publicity you need. So almost at every level, I feel as though we've gone backwards. It's substantially gone backwards. There'll be others that argue it's caused by other things, but I think it's not coincidence. It is too closely related to be a coincidence. This is pretty much what a lot of us predicted would happen, and it is happening. It hasn't, as far as I know, led to the situation that we had before we had the cashless card, where we had a death. In fact, 7 of them, I think. But it almost seems inevitable that if destructive behaviour continues eventually, you end up with a tragedy. But there are little tragedies happening every day when families are failing to that extent, and it has a knock-on effect to those people in community. And I'm talking in this case about the Indigenous community, but bear in mind that the cashless debit card was aimed at everybody on working age welfare within the footprint. But it has that knock-on effect that those people that are managing their lives well actually get dragged down. Visitations from family, friends, all those kinds of things, and not being able to get people out of their house, off their property, and then the general community forming a dimmer view of good people. And so it's a really nasty spiral. We're seeing the terrible outcomes of Alice Springs Tennant Creek at the moment on our television screens, and a lot of it's not making our television screens because it's too graphic to put on the screens. And we just don't want to go down the same pathway. And at the moment, it feels as though we're getting dragged into that hole, I'd have to say.
Just before we go, Rowan, last time we talked with you, I think you might have even been in your car having to divert around the flooding that had happened around World's End. Are there roads that are managed by the federal government or going to need a federal injection after the heavy rain and flooding that happened in the electorate of Grey that could do with some immediate assistance?
That was a little while ago, Ricky. The damage down there at World's End, I don't think that caused a lot of damage there, and it's back operating. But certainly the council had real issues with secondary roads, and I think that will probably be within the capability of the Goyder Council. I'm not too sure whether they made any special appeal to the state government to get extra funds, but certainly when we saw the major damage here where I live, in the Kimber-Cow-Cleve district councils 12 months ago, the national disaster relief mechanisms, which sit in place, and you need to meet these certain trigger points, and at a certain point it's up to the local council to fix, and then when it gets over that it becomes a shared operation between council and state, and when it gets over that then the federal government steps in. Now that operates all the way around Australia, so if people have these really large damage events, they do know it might take a little while to get things triggered up, and it did in that case, but they do know that there is a safety net which sits in place underneath that will see the next levels of government kick in depending on how great that damage is. And I think that's the right, proper response. We don't want to get to the situation where every time we get a thunderstorm go through, woe is us, and we can't fix this up ourselves. I mean, people need to have, people and councils, a certain amount of self-resilience. But of course, when you get a disaster that of such scale that they can't handle it, well, then there needs to be that secondary backup. That sits in place. I will assist any council to get through that process if that's what they need. And certainly in the case when we had it here 12 months ago, I was on the phone to the ministers, and it took a little bit of cracking to make sure that everything happened before we went into caretaker mode with the state government.
Yeah, but if you're a small council like, say, a Woodnadatta or a Barunga West, sometimes the money you need, I mean, if you don't have the ratepayer base to fix a particular road, is there sometimes more of a case for them to get funding than, say, a larger council supported by a major centre?
Yeah, sure, but the rates that are set are on a pro rata, in my understanding. So I think that's sort of building the system. The other thing, of course, is when you've got major damage, you can't fix it all up in 2 weeks either. And so that expense is a sort of grinding, long, ongoing things as you address. And here in my own council area, the Coober District Council still has a long range of works to go to repair and the situation that was caused 12 months ago. But that funding remains in place, and I've checked with them a couple of times. I said yes when we get that particular works program up and we are able to go in and access the money now. I'm sure they will let me know if that's not happening properly. And in the case of Gorda, I haven't had that kind of conversation with the council, but I'm sure they'll let me know if they feel as though they need that kind of assistance.
All right, Rowan Ramsey, a whole log of stuff to take to Canberra when it commences on Monday. Thanks so much for joining us again on Flow.
No, always a pleasure, Ricky. Thanks very much.